All right, we will get started. Chimikwich, merci beaucoup. Thank you for joining us this evening for our first Health Sciences webinar entitled Respect the Difference with Dr. Joseph Leblanc. I'm Dr. Mike Ravenick, and I am the manager of the Health Sciences programs at NOSM. And I'm going to do some quick welcome and introductions before we get started. Here's a quick agenda of the evening. So after those welcomes and introductions, we're going to have a blessing by Perry McLeod-Shabogesic, and then we're going to get into the webinar with Dr. Leblanc and have a formal moderated Q&A period. So as you saw in the instructions before, certainly if you have questions that come up during the webinar, feel free to include those in the chat box. Also a reminder, if you could keep your microphone off during the webinar, as well as your video. This video is being recorded and it's going to be posted to YouTube and archived on the NOSM website afterwards. So we just want to make sure everyone is aware of that. After the formal part of the webinar, we're going to move into the announcement of the Preceptor Awards, the nominees and the awards. And then we're going to have some closing remarks from Perry McLeod-Shabogesic again. So just a couple of things to do before we get started. We acknowledge that the entirety of NOSM's wider campus of Northern Ontario is the ancestral traditional lands of the First Nations people of Métis people who resided alongside. We also respectfully acknowledge that the medical school building at Laurentian University is located in the Robinson-Huron Treaty Territory and at Lakehead University in the Robinson-Superior Treaty Territory. Today is Orange Shirt Day, which is an opportunity for Canadians to learn about the legacy of the residential school system and the intergenerational impacts that this has had. Members of the NOSM Health Sciences team are wearing their orange shirts today, and we hope that you are all as well. And we're going to introduce you to members of the team towards the end of the event today. Hopefully you had a chance to participate in an Orange Shirt Day event at some point today. So this is our first Health Sciences webinar. And this is the webinar series is the first of a number of new initiatives that are going to be coming out of the NOSM Health Sciences program over the next 6 to 12 months. And these webinars are going to occur each month. We have all of the events scheduled now through to the end of 2020. And we're going to be looking to you for monthly topics for 2021 and beyond through our webinar evaluation form. So again, that's going to be sent at the end of the webinar, and you'll be able to provide your evaluation and suggestions for future topics. If you don't already receive email updates from the Health Sciences team at NOSM, including information about webinars and placement requests, make sure that you email hsplacements@nosm.ca, and we'll make sure that you get signed up for the right email lists, whether that's for rehab, for NODIP, or the physician assistant program. So I'm going to start by introducing Dr. Leblanc, and then I'm going to introduce Perry McLeod-Shabogesic before we get started with the blessing. So Dr. Joseph Leblanc is a lifelong Northern Ontarian and member of the Wee-Quang unceded territory. Dr. Leblanc has been appointed the school's inaugural Associate Dean of Equity and Inclusion, which began July 1st of 2020. Previous to this, Dr. Leblanc has been NOSM's Director of Indigenous Affairs since 2018. He holds an Honors Bachelor of Environmental Studies in Forest Conservation, an Environmental Management Certificate, and a PhD in Forest Sciences from Lakehead University. Dr. Leblanc is recognized as a leading expert in Indigenous food systems and community development in Canada. He has also received several awards, including a Top 20 Under 40 Northwestern Ontario Visionary Award and a 40 Under 40 Northern Ontario Business Award. We are very fortunate to have Dr. Leblanc here with us today to deliver our first Health Sciences webinar on a very important topic on a very important day. Chimikwich, Dr. Leblanc, and as I mentioned before things Before handing things over to Dr. Leblanc, we are going to have a blessing to open the event from Perry McLeod-Shabogesic. And Perry is from the Nipissing First Nations, from the Crane clan. He is an Indigenous Knowledge Keeper and has been active in the NOSM community for over 10 years. He is often called Anzolt, meaning storyteller. He says it's important to him to bring a different understanding or worldview to NOSM learners who may one day be learning or practicing in a First Nation community. We're very honored to have Perry with us today to provide an opening blessing, and I'm now going to turn things over to Perry. Chimikwich Perry.
Bonjour. Anzo Kadishnika, Shagi Dodem, Bising, Donjaba, Nishnabe, and Dao. Nishnabe name is Anzoket, which means the one who tells stories, as was mentioned. I'm from Nipissing, from the Crane clan. I am Shikabewis, a traditional helper. And presently I work for Nijan Sinanik, Child and Family Services, the North Bay, Perry Sound, Sudbury area. I wanted to first welcome you to my lodge here in this virtual way that we do things in the last little while. And just to acknowledge the time that we are in, not just that fasting time that we are all in, we spend time alone or in small groups. We stay away from one another, we don't travel, we stay in place, and that is very much like fasting. So the whole world is in a fast right now. And I wanted to acknowledge that things happen for a reason. And that is part of our learning as the human race. I also want to acknowledge this time that we're in the fall time, this time of that final harvest we do, that final preparation we do before winter sets. Our mother, the earth, lays down to rest and covers herself with that blanket of snow. And all those small beings that join her in their burrows, they cuddle up to her and stay warm and snuggle with her over the winter time. This time is a time we reflect back as well over the summer. That time that we have, the busyness of our life has transpired in that summertime, and things begin to slow down. And we prepare. We are always in preparation, and the seasons remind us of that. To always prepare ourselves in our life, prepare ourselves for those things that unfold on our path, and try to be prepared as best we can. Respecting the difference is something that when we go out into creation, we are reminded of that, respecting the difference. Because in all of creation, everything has its place. Everything has its purpose. Every leaf, every blade of grass, every insect, every element has its place. None are above each other. We are all within the same realm. We need each other. We all play a role and have a purpose. And respecting that difference is what creation asks us to do, to recognize that, to see everything as an equal and everything with purpose. So when we look at one another, that is the way we need to see. That is that Anishinaabe worldview. We see everything having everything being the same. And it doesn't matter whether you're a doctor, a lawyer, or an Indian chief, you all have that role to play. And we have that clan system. Those 7 clans that have responsibilities in different areas, some in leadership, in learning, in teaching, in spirituality, but none are above anyone. We all have a place. And so I think the difference is part of that teaching, part of you using that gift of humility to know that you are no better than anyone else, but you are no lesser as well. So those are the things that come to mind when I sit and take part in this very special gathering. This way now that we are doing things told me that the work has to continue. You always have to find a way to do work. And so today we are challenged by that. And we have to find a way to come together to continue the work of healing and that work of sharing medicine. And that's what this is about. That's what each of you are doing in your work on your path. You are playing a role in that healing path for our people. Not only across this land, but wherever you travel, that is part of your role. That is part of your work. So I hope that through this webinar, the things you learn, you will be able to add to your knowledge bundle and pull it out when you need to and share it and make a small difference in the world through the work that you do. Now, miigwech.
Thank you so much, Perry, for that opening blessing. I truly appreciate you doing that for us. And I'm going to turn things over now to Dr. Leblanc, who we have introduced. And again, Jimmy Rich, thank you very much, Dr. Leblanc, for delivering the webinar today.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much for having me. And Jimmy Rich, Perry, thank you for the great introduction. I think I'm sharing my screen. Give me a thumbs up there, Mike. Awesome. Okay, so welcome everybody. I'm thrilled and honored to speak to you today about broadly, the concept of respect to difference and the new movement that NOSM is launching and has initiated, but also, try to set some of the stage for that. So, as was mentioned, it is Orange Shirt Day. This is the day to commemorate and honor the children that went and those that didn't come back, as well as those that returned and the survivors that are with us. So I'd encourage you to look online. We had an event today that'll be posted. It's some survivors sharing their stories directly, and I know many of you were there, and it's really great to see many of you wearing the orange shirts. So looking at some objectives for today, like I said, I want to talk about social accountability and medical education a little bit, set some of the foundation around health equity here in Northern Ontario, and look at how we move forward together and influence change and realize what we're hoping to see in this broadly socially accountable world. So what this means essentially, is the obligation to direct education, research, and service activities to address the priority health concerns of the community, region, or nation mandated to serve. So, here at NOSM, we were created to serve and meet the needs of Northern Ontario, 15 years ago, and prior to that, through the advocacy and lobbying efforts of community members, leaders from municipalities as well as First Nations, advocating for a school that would help to meet these needs. So as a foundational principle, NOSM was founded on the idea of social accountability. It's interesting, entering into this job, I kind of look at the other schools and try to understand, this small sliver that they've carved out for what they call equity and inclusion initiatives. And it dawned on me that really, NOSM is like a big sliver amongst that field of medical education. So, our 64 positions and what we're hoping will increase in the future are really meant to fill that need within the broader body of medical education that we have here in Northern Ontario. So I do want to kind of frame it that way, and try to understand how social accountability is modeled and meant to sort of roll out. So this is from the very famous Bolin work where they sort of framed 5 elements. It's called a partnership pentagram related to social accountability. And I mean, in a broader sense, in a national sense, or in a sort of a bigger picture, this has application. I find it has a very inappropriate fit to our context here in Northern Ontario for a couple of reasons, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But to touch on it is the idea that health professionals, academic institutions, policymakers, health administrators, much of who is around the table here today are somehow separate from community, and that community is some other entity that needs to be talked to. And so, like I said, at a national scale or a larger picture, this does have some application. When we apply it to Northern Ontario, though, really, in small community, and many of you, I'm sure live this, you are integrated in community, and you can't separate yourselves as health professionals from your neighbors and from the administrators, and institutions play such a role in our lives. But also policy is very distant, right? And we see that rolled out, and I'll show some stats later, but the idea of a disparity in political representation and a disparity in decision-making authority in Northern Ontario is very clear and evident as we roll this out. So our policymakers in this context are actually quite distant from community for the most part. And so that's why, I think that there's some work that could be done here. So we look at the planning cycle. And again, this is meant to sort of inform how, we're reflexive and responsive to community needs, going through the cycle of sort of identifying priorities and consulting with stakeholders, planning, implementing, and then evaluating the impact and bringing that back. So essentially, we're stuck with this question of how do we then measure what we're doing, right? And come to find that NOSM is often has difficulty articulating how we're being socially accountable, and some of that is because there's many different definitions, and that means different things to different people. So some of the work, is about defining what that means and looking at how we are, educating responsive to the needs, but also recruiting, appropriate people that are representative of the population, and then also retaining them into practice and retaining them into academics or leadership roles, or in this case, faculty positions. So, NOSM, like I said, founded on that principle of social accountability, has integrated many of these things into the mission, vision, values of the organization. Essentially what we're trying to do is be socially accountable to the needs and diverse populations of Northern Ontario, and certainly, trying to recruit here in the North to stay in the North for a wide spectrum of health professions. Again, how we hold up this is through these 8 principles, right? Interprofessionalism, which, many of you represent that community, integration, community engagement and inclusivity, generalism, continuity, dedication to inquiry, and professional identity formation. So you'll see how a lot of these, principles play out in the later stages of the presentation. Like I said, I have problems with that pentagram model. I think it's separates unnecessarily, sort of draws these false divisions. And I take lessons from what's called ABCD, so asset-based community development. I'd encourage you to look into it if you're interested in this type of engagement and how to implement, a broader perspective of community. And if you'll recall, within the pentagram, right, all of these elements that are so rich and important and diverse are lumped into one, right? And it's too easy within that structure to have, dominant voices just sort of represent community, and you have to think a lot more in depth than that. So again, in the inclusion perspective, looking at these diverse groups, you can see all of the different kind of things that play out in community, right? And these are generally represented in, asset mapping or in community development work as, institutions, individuals, associations, or the groupings of people, those that are participating in economic and business activities, and then the environment in which this takes place. And I think this is a really critical part as we look to what social accountability is moving forward. The ecology that we live around and our positionality within that is so critical, right? And Perry spoke about, the equality within the circle of life and the ability, there isn't a hierarchy. We are all dependent upon each other, and our health and well-being are directly connected to the health and well-being of our local environment. So, again, leaving these parts out of this pentagram, I think, has left us with a very narrow vision of what social accountability in medical education can be. And, there are multiple sort of approaches to being able to address this. I personally am a follower of asset-based community development principles, but I know there are many other examples that could also capture this step. So I'm going to get into health equity in Northern Ontario, and I was struggling with this a little bit, right? Is to say there's a lot of stats, a lot of them are really weak. Like, we have very poor data. I'll get into that, that's specific to populations within Northern Ontario. And then I recalled that, the impetus for the declaration of a state of emergency within the Anishinaabe Nation and Norman Shabogesic and his walk. So please, take the time to Google his name. Take the time to read what was written and the experience that he and his wife endured. Norman lost his partner on their 26th anniversary in Webquay, a remote community in Northern Ontario, because the oxygen tank at the health center was insufficient and they ran out. So Norman walked 500 kilometers on the ice road to Thunder Bay, had a toboggan, and dragged back an oxygen tank. And I think this quote, really speaks strongly to the outcome of the structure. The way it's set up right now, it's killing our people. Our people are dying. I'm reminded of the issue in Quebec right now, which is not unique. And I know people are aware of, incidents in Thunder Bay and Sudbury and other places. And, I encourage you to look into that and to really, think about what creates an environment in which an individual is, exits this realm hearing, the words of colonial violence. And, I think that, the reality of this is speaks for itself. So what we call the social determinants of health, right? I'm sure everybody is aware of this, this concept, and, it comes from research that, has been adapted to Canada as well. And, we have a lot of work happening in this in public health and in other places. And I know that this is foundational to a lot of your work. I do want to share, there are other things that sort of lead to this. It's always been very problematic to see gender, race, Indigenous status, for example, listed there. These are not social issues. These are things that can't change. And, ultimately, race is not the risk factor. Racism is. Gender is not the risk factor. Sexism is. And indigeneity is certainly not a risk factor. Colonialism, Christianity, and capitalism are. There's nothing inherently ill about being a woman or Indigenous or a particular race. And that framing, I think, is something that we need to think critically about and challenge. Looked into, what else is out there. Environmental and political determinants of health. In the US, they call this structural competency. I think it's something that we need to implement and look into. Operationalizing here at the school is an understanding of power and decision making, the role that institutions play in our lives, access to safe water, clean air, There was 67 boil water advisories in Ontario, many of which are in Northern Ontario. Some are in the south, some are nested right between Great Lakes, and still, Canada is unable to provide clean water. So, I think this idea of the social determinants is critical, and it's important to understand, the implications of some of those, but it's also important to understand the structures that created the environment in which these became the social determinants of health, right? And how we can sort of address and rebuild and dismantle those systems, to create health, right? So as I said, Northern Ontario has the greatest need and lacks data to appreciate its health inequities. There are citations at the end of the presentation. Health equity strategy needed for Northern Ontario. Certainly, I think NOSM is a part of that. We have to be really clear as to what is our jurisdiction and our purview. And I like to use the analogy of a house, right? Like, all we can really worry about is what happens in our household. And, at NOSM, I think that's our focus. There are implications that come from training and educating people in a socially accountable manner. There are implications that come from doing research in a relevant and socially accountable manner. There are many other players within this environment that can influence the health equity of Northern Ontarians. And part of the Respect the Difference campaign is to call upon those relations to work with us and work within their houses to make the change. So in Northern Ontario, NOSM is, yes, housed at Lakehead and Laurentian. Many of you are well aware that our learners are all over the place in all kinds of different environments, and the whole of Northern Ontario represents our campus. This is a really critical understanding. We talked about the land acknowledgement at the beginning. I think it's a really critical place to discuss, the foundation of this land, the treaties and the relationships with, Francophone nations as well as Indigenous nations, to understand that without the treaties, there would be no place called Canada. There would be no place called Ontario, Sudbury, Thunder Bay. They wouldn't have the jurisdiction to establish those, as well as, all of the outcomes of that are expressed through the Constitution, right? So the ability to establish a sovereign nation here, as sovereign as it is, came from the sovereignty of Indigenous nations, and the ability to create the structures that then impose the type of outcome that we see also stems from a fundamental relationship. So I encourage you to look in on that a little bit more and understand how, Canada really is our home on native land. I'm not going to spend too long going through this. I think drill into it if you want, pull the presentation up later, drill into the citations as well. I would say, really disappointed in the lack of data, but what we do have is very disappointing and concerning as well. Again, this is an expression of the inequalities that exist, particularly around access to French language services. There's a active offer undertaking that is sort of lackluster in its implementation in health settings, and I think that we can do a much better job of integrating that and looking into it. So I encourage you all to take the free online training, look into the active offer, look into whether you live in a designate community, and then find out how you can, offer services in French language. It doesn't mean everybody has to become fluent. It means that we have to utilize and invest in infrastructure to support people. And the health outcomes, like I say, are there to be explored. We look at the distinction between Northeastern and Northwestern Ontario. It's very similar. The implementation, I think, of a health equity strategy across Northwest and Northeastern Ontario will need to be distinct in its rollout, but certainly the outcomes that we're trying to address are there. The number of physicians as well as other health providers, is difficult to sort of advocate for within a system where Ontario is looking at it at a province-wide approach. So, some of the research and work that we need to do, and I know that many of you are well aware of the lack of capacity in the north around professional services that you offer, and how that impacts people's ability to seek care in a timely manner. So, we can look at national data as well, looking at, average earnings and other things, and, keep in mind those social determinants of health, and keep in mind those political and environmental determinants of health, and exactly how we can, address this, right? Education is a fundamental area that is currently, funded in a disproportionate way in Indigenous communities, and the outcome is right there. So when we go to, develop pathways or look to recruit, individuals who are able to complete health sciences degrees or participate in the field, we have to look, at those educational opportunities that take place prior to this, and if nearly 50% of people, on reserve are not completing their high school diploma, we're reducing our pool to work with to be able to, attend college and university and participate in the programming that we have. So, like I said, we need to worry about our house, but we also need to have a conversation about those other areas of purview that also need attention. Food insecurity is a really big one. A new report came out yesterday at Beyond Hunger. I think it's worth looking at. Certainly, the issues that existed in Canada and Northern Ontario were exacerbated by COVID, and really, COVID didn't create food insecurity. It was there before, but it certainly made it a lot more challenging for people to access healthy food. And there's a lot of different ways that this is expressed, but again, looking beyond just the outcome of hunger or food insecurity, and certainly income is a big part of that. Access to land that is productive, not just agricultural land, but forested lands that have forest and freshwater foods available and accessible at the community. Again, housing is a really critical one. It's something in the range of a $2 billion deficit as far as the housing standard on reserve in Northern Ontario. About 50% of those houses are below standard that we would expect in Canada. A little bit of a distinctions conversation around social determinants of health for francophone people. Certainly, like I said, access to French language services. Only 1/3 confirm speaking to their doctor in French. There are translation services, like I said, through Active Offer initiative that should be utilized more. And certainly, a discussion to be had over the higher rates of unemployment and other things that exist. So, going back to the quote at the beginning, we do live shorter lives, and the way it is built is killing our people, and this is a reality that we have to look at, for moving forward and implementing change. I want to kind of discuss some key concepts, before moving forward. Unfortunately, there isn't this button. I think in the U.S. it'd be like pushing this button, but here too, right? And this is going to take time, right? It took time to get here. It took many generations to implement the colonization strategy in Canada, for example, and it's going to take time to make that change. So anybody who's expecting this switch to switch off, it's time to think to that longer time frame. I talked a little bit about the determinants of health. I think that dropping the social, integrating, environmental, integrating institutional and structural determinants of health will help to turn the lens to where it's really needed. We can, continue to cycle around the idea that, there are certain decisions or inherent factors like indigeneity or race or gender that predetermine ill health, and I think that that's to the detriment of all of our work. We do need to broaden that and start to turn a lens to where it really is a problem, and some of that is around the colonization and other elements. Looking at the spectrum, of engagement, I think that there's clear body of work that discusses the idea of consultation without participation, all the way to empowered engagement, and we're sort of straddle that line in different expressions within the school. We straddle that line in different expressions within government, but ultimately, we need to all be working towards the side of that spectrum that talks about empowered engagement. That'll mean letting go, that'll mean sharing decision-making authority. That'll mean learning, and having uncomfortable conversations about what we've done wrong, about what we need to do to change, and building new alliances where we need to. And so, I think that gone are the days of sort of having a conversation and taking a picture and saying we're partners. People want more accountability than that, and they want a seat at the table. And there are many ways that this can happen, such as like basic things like hiring committees, including diverse and representative people from our relations into our recruitment, say in hiring, but also in our student population, and by giving up some of that power and giving space for others to speak. Decolonization, sovereignty, autonomy, these words are related to each other, and I think it's sort of a default to say, okay, well, that's the work of Francophone or Indigenous people. It's not solely our work. It is everybody's work in Canada, and we took these steps towards this in the early 80s. The steps towards the development of the Constitution. Well, we retained the figurehead, the idea of the crown, right? We retained the concept that there's this other sort of sovereign that oversees Canada, and it's an interesting thing to see play out, because I hear a lot of people, especially now, hunting season and stuff, and they talk about going to public land. It's not public land; it's crown land. It's the crown's land, right? They're permitting you to harvest the crown's deer, right? The crown's moose, and I think a lot about the concept of the crown, because we have engagements in a national conversation around Indigenous food systems and sovereignty with Crown actors, and this figurehead gets to sort of exist and be fluid, right? So there's an elected branch, there's people who are elected to be the MP or MPP, and they sit, with the each other and make decisions. And then there's bureaucrats, right, who are there and they're connected. They're also seem to persist a lot longer or move around, but they're also the Crown. Right, and then we got, the princes and the baby princes and princesses and everybody else that are the Crown as well. And I think, the way this plays out, it creates this, again, like, idea that there's some other entity that we're all subjects of. And I challenge, you as Canadians and Ontarians to look at the ways that, colonization is impacting your life. Right. The idea that, we as a school, as a creation of a government strategy to address health, don't have the autonomy to, add the students we think we need to add, add the programs that we need to add, or, do the types of things that we recognize need to be done because we need to ask the Crown for permission. We elect 7 people to sit in Toronto for all of Northern Ontario, 9 now with the new ridings. They sit with 130 or so other people. We could have, all one party elected here and still have no voice there. But, like I said, think about the ways that this plays out in your life, when you fill out your, hunting application, or you fill out these things. It doesn't mean that it's a free for all afterwards. It means that we need to indigenize our governance, right? Which, in an ecological perspective, is those things that, originate in place, right? We have a political system, an economic system that was imposed upon this place to extract wealth for foreign entities. And essentially, we still do that, right? We pull forest products out and we pull minerals out and we bring them elsewhere. And ultimately, we're participating in this colonial system. And then we call it our economy. Economy is the in and outs of home, right? And we need to take a look at our home and what we're doing to it. So sovereignty, plays out in there. Like I said, the sovereign, was taught to our ancestors and ourselves as being the Crown, but that exists within us, right? And we had a session today, like I said, on Orange Shirt Day, and we heard about the infringement of those children's personal sovereignty, their sexual sovereignty, their ability to express themselves within the nationhood, or the rites of passage and other elements that fed their being, and their journey that they took to regain that personal sovereignty. And I think there's some lessons within that can speak to, how we do that on a collective, and how we can build sovereign beings, sovereign households, and be part of sovereign communities that actually do express autonomy and respect for each other. And work towards designing things that meet our needs here in Northern Ontario. Equity, inclusion, and diversity. These are complex terms. At times it reads like a curse word on social media. Sometimes, and when an institution declares that they're going to implement an EDI strategy, and I really do have a lot of faith in what we're doing, and under this lens of equity, diversity, and inclusion, there's some guidance towards a future that's a bit more like this button, right, and empowering other people to lead change in our region and lives. And finally, an anti-racist approach. This is something we have to be a lot more overt about. We've heard a lot of really disturbing stories lately. Like I said, Quebec, Northern Ontario, Manitoba, British Columbia, the idea that those that are meant to be providing care are actually, causing harm, and those places that are meant to be a place of healing are actually unsafe for a lot of people. And we need to become more overtly anti-racist. And the way that this plays out, I think it's peers and institutions calling this out and addressing it and dealing with people that are behaving this way. One of the commonalities I keep hearing, as we talk with learners and physicians and other people that are, our alumni that are working in Northern Ontario. Yes, it's structural, but yes, it's individuals. Individuals that are making the decision to, force sterilization under coercion, remove people from the ER or whatever it is that they're doing, and taking it upon themselves to enact the type of colonial violence that we saw in that video from Quebec. So, you listen to me, or you listen to everybody else who keeps saying this. There's a lot of stuff out there. This is not an exhaustive list. Follow the lead of people who are asserting their sovereignty. Follow the lead of people who have been living and are experts of living with, states of food insecurity, and start to implement this stuff. I mean, there can be a really pretty full dusty shelf somewhere at the government, I think, but it's up for us to sort of pick these things up and understand our positionality within these systems and how we can, either support or get out of the way of the people who are trying to make change. So looking at moving forward together, encourage you to visit the website, culture.nosm.ca. I'll talk a little bit about it. This big fire here, Chishkode, is really means a lot to me. In the imagery of what we're trying to do, and I think, the concept of Vishkode from an Anishinaabe perspective, there's different expressions, so 5, different forms of fire. One of those is that energy within all of us, right? And all living things will burn like this. You're not actually setting fire, you're releasing that energy. And it plays a really, really important role in the forest for that release and for that renewal. I was talking with the physician friend there a few minutes before this, and he says, we need to throw more fuel on the fire, right? And it was after I had put this in there, but it's that kind of idea, I think, that's really, really critical. This waste, this clutter, this old way of being, this old way of thinking, let's burn it and let's restart, right? And let's use that energy to do something else. So, Respect the Difference campaign, something we launched here at NOSM. We really do believe that for the medical profession to sustain itself in a healthy way, the profession needs to become more respectful, supportive, and much kinder. And it starts with education. Medical school is the first time that future health professionals get a taste of the culture of medicine and what to expect in the profession. As preceptors, we want you to role model this movement, right? And I'll be talking to the preceptors in the medical program as well. We don't need you to teach, how it really is, how to really treat Indigenous people, or what Francophones really want, or whatever. We want you to teach them kindness. We want you to teach them, to be empowered advocates, and we want you to teach them to be leaders within this movement. And so we're asking you to role model this behavior. So we all have work to do. We can all do just a little bit better. We can all do a lot better. I don't doubt that, many of you feel you may already be kind, inclusive, and have a diverse outlook, but please delve deeper, look into some resources, have some difficult conversations, and learn new things. So what the Respect the Difference campaign is essentially, we're challenging ourselves as an institution. We're looking at our house first. We're looking to also encourage others to be conscientious and more respectful, inclusive, supportive, and kind in a concerted effort to build diversity. We're challenging communities, education at all levels, other Canadian medical schools, and the wider medical sector to join this movement. It's about actionable change. We're looking for organizational policies that are anti-racist and anti-discriminatory, policies that focus on harassment and the rights of people, personal changes, learning more about your behavior and your positionality within these relationships, your inherent bias. Ultimately, I make a distinction between actionism and activism. Activism being, asking others to change, actionism being, leading that change yourself and leading by doing. I like to use the example, of some really amazing food actionists that I know throughout northern communities, and I know some of you know them too. People who will, do what they can to make sure that there's food available for other people. They could spend this energy, protesting the Northern Store, blockading roads, but they don't. They spend that energy, building relationships with wholesalers and putting on markets and hunting for people and sharing the fish they caught and, sharing the knowledge that they have. And so, I'd love to see, an army of actionists out there actively doing this within your institutions and within your professional lives. You're not alone. We're offering support and resources to help guide people in that direction. Check out the website, share with each other, download the toolkits. We're going to have reading lists on there. We're going to have resource lists on there. Some of that stuff is growing now, but it needs to be populated by you, and the things that you're reading and doing. I saw a really amazing decolonizing dietetics resource the other day that, I know some of you have, but I seek it out if you don't, and start to question, how am I complacent or active participant in this ongoing colonization of Canada, and how can I participate in the decolonization movement? And here at NOSM, we're starting with specific strategies and plans, and I'll get into that a little bit. So the NOSM strategic plan was just approved by our board like an hour and a half ago, but it's been the work of many people here at the school for the better part of a year, and we're really proud to share it now. I encourage you to look for it and get it in your hand and take a look. So, yeah, this image of the river, I have this image of a raging river that I shared with a good friend and an elder in northwestern Ontario. We were standing beside this river one day. We were talking about, the food system and how immense this institutional and sort of stranglehold that it had over the North, around the Crown's role in shaping Nutrition North and other initiatives that were supposed to be helping, to look at factory farming and all these things. And I was overwhelmed. I was in the position of a food strategy coordinator with NAN, and, it seemed like a big undertaking to say, well, how do we influence this powerful thing, right? And, it reminded me that throwing these rocks in, the river, the little ones that get washed away, but eventually this is how the shape of the river is formed, right? It's not the water alone, it's the environment in which it's operating. And if you remember the ABCD thing, we often leave that out, but we influence that too, right? So I left there thinking about this idea of, throwing rocks in a river and all of the actionists that it was working with and knowing, and we started throwing bigger rocks, right? And I started to think about that. You know, how do we change the flow of something that seems so powerful with something that, you know, is it's been there forever and has the spirits, you know, of the ancestors and the knowledge that's there with it. And so, you know, I kind of see this when I read through the plan, right? And I think of all of you as preceptors, and I think of, you know, my colleagues as educators and as leaders within this change movement. And I, you know, I ask you to, you know, pick up the rocks that you can, you know, work with the people near you, you know, get stronger together, throw bigger rocks together, you know, and eventually we'll be standing looking at a dry area with a new river carving somewhere else. So NOSM has identified 4 strategic directions: transforming human resource planning, advance social accountability, innovate health professions education, strengthen research capacity in Northern Ontario. Some of the rocks and, you know, strengthening those rock throwers, you know, valuing our people, we call these strategic enablers, managing our resources, investing in infrastructure, sustaining our resilience. So transforming health human resources, I'll just touch on some of these things. I'm aware, you know, we're coming down to the end here. Really forming an evidence-based approach to health human resource planning for Northern Ontario. You know, we are distinct from the rest of Ontario. Yeah, there might be on paper enough professionals for all of the North, but it's not appropriate for our children or others to be flown, you know, many miles, particularly in COVID. You know, we need resources here, and we need a distinct approach for identifying those and forming that with evidence. Looking at the integration of rural and remote community needs, enhancing connectivity and communications for all NOSM communities, and a system of support for clinical faculty in their academic work. So, you know, I'd encourage you as preceptors, you know, if you have an interest in these areas, if you have a gap in communication or connectivity, reach out to my office, reach out to us, you know, let us know what your needs are and how we can work. Certainly there'll be forums to be able to identify that stuff. But, you know, the relational element of that is critical. Advancing social accountability. Our goal here is to embed social accountability throughout NOSM with a focus on measurable, transformative, and sustainable change in healthcare systems from Northern Ontario. Again, like I said, you know, we focus on our house with an eye on external. Our goal is to, you know, put out well-trained health professionals who can then go out and influence this change and be the change that we're hoping to see. You know, really looking at different health service models. I'm very excited about the health transformation work. As I said, the work, the incident in Webequay that led to the walk that Norman Schwabic undertook also led to the declaration of a state of emergency within Nan Territory, and ultimately a tripartite agreement with government that led to a health transformation undertaking. So we're keenly awaiting, you know, to see the outcomes of that and how we can be responsive as a medical school. And I encourage you to do the same, you know, to look into those materials and see how that impacts your practice. Aligning our educational programs with societal and community needs, I think, is critical, and it has a lot to do with the health sciences and you know, the disciplines that you represent, but also those that we're lacking, and you know, those that we're trying to send our kids to through referrals and other things, and we need more professionals. Addressing the calls to action, truth and reconciliation, as well as the report on the inquiry into missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls is critical. There are specific calls to action that relate to medical education. There are specific calls to action that relate to the medical professionals and health professionals. And again, I would encourage you as well to look into those and how they influence your own work. So renewing the curriculum and embedding socially accountable content is a really critical part. I think that we should be looking at, the history, in particular, distinct outcomes of health that occur in Northern Ontario, and educating our students to address them. Innovation, health professional education. A big part of this is the creation of new pathways. You'll see, or probably have seen, the rollout of the rural generalist pathway. We'll also be tying into that streams that are for Indigenous and Francophone, and potentially others through new pathways to education. This involves work at childhood level, exposing them to health careers as options in a fun way. We've partnered with Science North to start to launch those camps. COVID delayed that, but it'll happen when it can. And working with our alumni, we're 15 years old now. Some of our graduates are getting their feet under them and establishing themselves, and we'll be coming to them to help to role model for people in their area and build some mentorship opportunities. Really looking hard at admissions and having an admissions program that meets the needs of Northern Ontarians. And really, like I said, building a safe learning and work environment that all of this can happen within. Research is a really critical area that we need to strengthen our capacity. And a lot of this has to do with doing relevant research and looking at new research opportunities, such as the Masters of Medical Science. And managing data sets for Northern Ontario. So like I said, I'm not going to get into all of this. I appreciate the time that you've given me, and I encourage you to look at this now that it's launched. So I do want to acknowledge that this work occurs on the shoulders of giants. I have many colleagues, and there are many people that have come before us that have got us here. It's time for more and more people to pick up this work and to pick up the spirit of what the Respect the Difference campaign involves. And I want to acknowledge that big fire and the energy that's in all of us, and the ability to cleanse and to renew, but also the ability to give us that drive. So I encourage you, and I acknowledge the existence of the rock throwers, and I want you to sort of think about that in your life, and did want to kind of leave on that note. So there are some references at the back. I'm going to share this with the organizers, but we do have a little bit of time for questions.
Merci beaucoup, Jimmy Gwitch. Thank you, Dr. Leblanc. We're very fortunate to have you at NOSM to help clean up and take care of our own house, as you termed it, our home. With your leadership, we're no doubt going to become a leader in equity and inclusion moving forward. You had some very powerful messages on health equity in Northern Ontario, and challenges for us to think differently, or to refocus our lens in relation to the social determinants of health. In terms of Francophone health, I did want to mention actually that some of our future webinars that we already have scheduled are going to focus on the active offer, and they're also going to focus as well on Francophone health. The key concepts that you presented help to give us some ideas to reflect on how we can incorporate them into our own practice and our work with learners. To role model kindness, to have difficult conversations, to learn new things, to think about actionism and leading by doing, and how we are complacent in colonization. So I want to really thank you for your talk, Dr. LeBlanc. It was fantastic, and I believe Haley has been keeping track of some questions that we will direct to you now.
Hi, Dr. Leblanc. So we do have one question. So thank you for the thought-provoking presentation and conversation. Can you share some of NOSM's plans specific to rehab and health sciences programs to move forward on these concepts of decolonization, anti-racism, and to move towards a more equitable health system that involves community?
Sure. So, you know, the key thing I think about the strategic plan is it's a 5-year plan. So, you know, the identification of the need for new health sciences programs or for changes to, you know, admissions or enrollment and those kinds of things is something that's going to have to roll out over a time period, and also engage, you know, with the data that's being created through the research outcomes, right? So right now we're challenged, like I said, by this provincial sort of rolling up, but we hope to sort of, you know, separate that out and understand the distinction there. I do know, you know, some of the content right around Indigenous content and education in dietetics, for example, is changing, and, you know, the implementation, like I said, of a decolonizing perspective is being asked for. So, you know, I would think that, you know, it's time for all of us to kind of think about those things. I don't have a, you know, direct, easy answer to that, to say we're doing X, Y, and Z. But, you know, that direction is there, and I think it's for all of us as part of this community to shape that.
And I'll just actually add to that as well, Dr. Leblanc, for the rehab specific focus. So within the strategic plan, we certainly made sure that there were specific objectives within the strategic plan, not just for rehab, but for all of health sciences. And specifically, we had objectives related to recruitment and retention and professional development of our health sciences clinicians. And that professional development certainly focuses on issues related to equity and inclusion. And the initiatives that I mentioned at the beginning that we're going to slowly roll out over the next 6 to 12 months are stemming from those objectives that are in the strategic plan. And certainly in the future, I will actually have a kind of a town hall style meeting with anyone from the clinical community who wants to be involved and be able to present and discuss some of these objectives and the initiatives. But there will also be email communications going out about them as well. But just wanted to add that piece specific to the rehab and health sciences.
Thank you. So we do have a couple more questions. So just speaking to strategic direction number 3, when you spoke to looking at NOSM's admissions and meeting Northern Ontario's diverse needs, will NOSM start collecting ethnic-based data in NOSM programs, so MD, NODEP, rehab programs, to see if recruitment is effectively meeting these needs?
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, we have to. I mean, we do already for certain populations. So we're tracking and documenting Indigenous and Francophone applicants, as well as, you know, their success, and then where they're practicing, you know, with their consent, of course. But yeah, we do have to start doing this. For example, we've been asked, there's a call by the Black Medical Students Association of Canada with several recommendations towards medical schools. So we'll be having a forum at the beginning of November to discuss, you know, how we'll implement that, and working with our faculty and learners that are interested to figure out what kind of data, you know, needs to be recorded and tracked in order to report back on requests such as the one from the Black Medical Students Association of Canada.
Thank you, Dr. Leblanc. So we have one more question. So miigwech for your talk, Dr. Leblanc, can you speak to the value of lived or living experiences and traditional knowledge in an educational institution that, of course, places great value on the type of institutional knowledge?
Yeah, well, thank you. That's a great question, and something that we deal with quite regularly with in my previous role as director of Indigenous Affairs, and that sort of overlap between institution and community, and where expertise really lies, right? And so you heard in the introduction of Perry, he's been involved with the school for over 10 years. There are many knowledge keepers throughout the region that we engage with as experts for educating our learners, and so it's recognized that the expertise that exists within Western education systems is one form of expertise. It's typically a very hierarchical form of expertise, and that which exists in the community is a lot more circular, right? So there may be many experts on very specific things, and not the sort of like all-encompassing expertise that you'd see from a professor or somebody within a Western framing. So it is about lived experience, and it is about acknowledging that the inclusion of people who for example have a certain procedure done to them regularly in the development of the curriculum of teaching that procedure might be really critical, right? And that physicians may have never had that done to them. They may be doing it to people or for diagnostic purposes, but the conversation there is really critical. So when we look at how do we operationalize a socially accountable curriculum, then people with lived experience, people with traditional knowledge are critical assets to the development of that curriculum.
Thank you, Dr. Leblanc. At this time, I don't see any more questions in the chat box.
Okay, well, thank you all for listening. You know where to find me, and I'd be open to continue the conversation, and I really appreciate your attentiveness to this important topic.
Thank you so much, Dr. LeBlanc. So at this time, we're actually going to switch over to the Preceptor Awards, recognizing our nominees and our award winners. And the Health Sciences team and we actually pre-recorded the recognition of the nominees and awards because we weren't 100% sure how the technology was going to be in terms of going back and forth between people announcing nominees and award winners. So I'm going to share my screen now, and then we're going to watch the video. It's just about 20 minutes. And after that, after all of the nominees and winners are announced, then again, we will actually close the event with some final thoughts and words from Perry. Hello and welcome to the NOSM Health Sciences Preceptor Awards, where we recognize preceptors who have gone above and beyond in the supervision of audiology, dietetic, occupational therapy, physiotherapy, and speech-language pathology learners on placements in Northern Ontario. I'm Mike Rabinick. I am the new Health Sciences Manager at NOSM.
Hi, I'm Haley Massiero, and I'm a Community Relations Coordinator for the Health Sciences program at NOSM.
My name is Derek Weiss. I am the Physiotherapy Clinical Learning Liaison for Northeastern Ontario.
Hi, I'm Cindy Davis-Maley. I'm the Clinical Liaison for Speech Language Pathology.
Hi, my name is Sarah Tinkler-Josephi, and I'm the Clinical Learning Liaison for the Speech Language Pathology and Audiology in Northwestern Ontario.
Hi, my name is Grace King. I'm the Occupational Therapy Clinical Learning Liaison for Northeastern Ontario.
Hi, I'm Regan Bolduc, Occupational Therapist and Clinical Learning Liaison for Occupational Therapy in the Northwest, based out of Thunder Bay.
Hi, I'm Brock Chisholm. I'm the CLL for the Northwest Ontario Physiotherapy Program with rehabilitation studies for NOSM.
Hello, I'm Denise Raftis, manager of the Northern Ontario Dietetic Internship Program, NODIP for short, and it's my honor to be able to participate today in our first webinar series. So welcome.
So before we get started, we want to thank all of our health science clinicians in Northern Ontario for working with us to provide opportunities for learners to come to Northern Ontario to develop competence in their chosen discipline and skills that are needed to work in Northern Ontario. Without you, your time and dedication to providing these opportunities, our program would not exist. We are indebted to you. And these awards, which are given out in person, are a small way for us to recognize the very large contribution that each of you makes to the rehabilitation sciences and NODIP programs in Northern Ontario. We'll be announcing the nominees and winners for our 5 award categories, which are Academic Excellence, Commitment to Clinical Education, Innovative Preceptor Award, Interprofessional Collaborator, and the Northern Ambassador Award. And since we're holding the awards virtually this year as part of our inaugural Health Sciences webinar, we are recognizing preceptors in both Northeastern and Northwestern Ontario. In the near future, descriptions recognizing each of our award winners will be available to see on our NOSM Rehab Science and NODIP websites. With that being said, let's get started with our first award category.
The first award is for academic excellence. This is awarded to an individual who consistently participates in or contributes to scholarly activities, including research, mentorship, academic instruction, or other related works.
Here are the nominees: Andy Wang, Kara Green, Carrie Hall, Christopher Wynn, Lav Nelson,
Laura Diaz, Matthew Beta, Susan Redmond Brodeur, and Zoe Campbell.
And now for the winners of the Academic Excellence Award for the NODIP program. And the winners are Kara Green and Laura Diaz. Kara Green is a dietitian with the Mental Health Rehabilitation Program with the St. Joseph's Care Group in Thunder Bay. Kara was also the recipient of this award in 2018. The second winner is Laura Diaz. Laura was nominated for this award when she worked at the Temiskaming Health Unit in New Liskeard. Now, Laura is completing her Master's of Science in Public Health and Health Systems at the University of Waterloo.
The winners for physiotherapy are, in the Northwest, Christopher Wynn from Fanti Physiotherapy and Associates, Thunder Bay.
And Fleur Nelson from the Group Health Center in Sault Ste. Marie.
The winner for occupational therapy in the Northwest is Zoe Campbell. Congratulations, Zoe. Zoe's based out of Firefly in Kenora.
The winner for speech language pathology and audiology is Carrie Hall, who is a speech language pathologist from Firefly in Kenora.
Our next award is the Commitment to Clinical Education Award. This is awarded to a preceptor who demonstrates commitment towards the clinical education of health science professionals, learners in the North, as evidenced by being a frequent and willing participant, supporter, and champion of clinical education.
And the Commitment to Clinical Education nominees includes Amelia Hessel, Amy Legere, Annabelle Men, Brianna Chase, Kara Bernier, and Kara Green, as well as Christine LaBelle, Diane Pigeot, Erica Ogilvie, Erin Woodback, Polly Frail, and Jackie Hummelbrenner.
Nominees to Commitment to Clinical Education also include Jane Horiguchi, Jason Tadeo, Johnny Power, Julie Lowe, Katie McBean, Kendra Dobinson, Kirsten Bernosky, Kylie Knudsen, Lisa Amsden, Lisa Lees, Lisa Sawatsky, and Lori Ivy.
Nominees also include Megan Bernard, Michael Belcamino, Michael Ivany, Monique Haddow, Nicole Wood, Peter Jordan, Sarah Sawicki, Sarah, Stephen Mangoff, Susan Coulter, Susan Peonage, Tanya Altman, and Teresa Lay.
The winners for the Commitment to Clinical Education Awards for the NODA program are Lisa Lee and Megan Bernard. Lisa Lee is a dietitian at St. Joseph's Hospital at the St. Joseph's Care Group in Thunder Bay. The second winner is Megan Bernard. Megan works for Sioux Area Hospital in Sault Ste. Marie.
The winners for the physiotherapy program are Julie Lowe, St. Joseph's Care Group, Thunder Bay, Kylie Knudsen, Northern Physiotherapy, Thunder Bay,
and Lisa Amsden, Group Health Center, Sault Ste. Marie in the Northeast.
Winners for Occupational Therapy program include Jane Horiguchi in the Northwest. Jane is based out of Thunder Bay Regional Health Sciences Center in Thunder Bay.
And Michael Ivany. Michael works at North Bay Regional Health Center in North Bay. Congratulations.
The winners for speech language pathology and audiology are Amelia Hessel from West Perry Sound Center in Sound.
And Susan Coulter, who is a speech language pathologist at the Children's Center Thunder Bay in Thunder Bay.
Our next award is the Innovative Preceptor Award. This is awarded to a preceptor who embraces innovation in providing clinical learning experiences. This award will recognize an educator and/or therapist who is prepared to do things differently, innovatively, in order to meet the learning needs of the learner.
And the nominees for Innovative Preceptor include Christopher Wynn, Deanne Lee, Dennis Dunphy, Fleur Nelson, Jessica Love, Nicole Selman, and Kendra Patrick, Jody Dawson, and Justine Jecker.
Kim McGibbon, Kirsten Ing, Kristen Charbonneau, Lisa Sawatsky, Nicole Strong, Rachel DeRoche, Susan Coulter, and Valerie Walson.
The winners for the Innovative Preceptor Award for the NODA program are, first, a shared award between three people, Jessica Love, Nicole Salmon, and Kendra Patrick. They are dietitians with the North Bay Perry Sound Public Health Unit, and they provided a virtual placement this past spring. The second award goes to Kim McGibbon. Kim works for Roots to Harvest in Thunder Bay.
And the winners for the Innovative Preceptor Award in Physiotherapy are Fleur Nelson, Group Health Center, based out of Sault Ste. Marie.
and Kirsten Ing from George Jeffrey Children's Treatment Center in Thunder Bay.
Winners for the Occupational Therapy program include Deanne is based out of St. Joe's Care Group in Thunder Bay.
And Diane Pigeot from Timmins and District Hospital in Timmins.
And the winner is, for speech language pathology, Sarah McSheffrey from the Cochrane Timiskaming Children's Treatment Center in Cochrane.
And the winner for audiology is Tanya Altman from Enhanced Hearing Centers in Dryden.
Our next award is the Interprofessional Collaborator Award. This is awarded to an individual who is recognized by their peers and learners for being a good collaborator or leader of interprofessional learning.
And the nominees for Interprofessional Collaborator include Aya Mohammed, Christina Venier, Elisa Jenkins, Jackie Hummelbrunner, Jamie Trusler, Justine Jecker, Karen Harris, and Carly Hawken.
Other nominees for Interprofessional Collaborator include Kayla Palambaro, Lee Rysdale, Matt Eaton, Miranda Termat, Navneet Sidhu, a co-nomination for Nicole Diamici and Karen Pontello, and Patricia Della Cecca.
Stephanie Gugliare, Sue Peonage, Susan Edmund, Tiffany Fay, and Wendy Lisi.
The winners of the Interprofessional Collaborator Award for the NODIT program are Sue Peonage and Lee Risdale. Sue works at the Regional Cancer Program at the Thunder Bay Regional Health Sciences Center in Thunder Bay. Lee Risdale is a dietitian who works for the Northern Ontario School of Medicine.
And the winners for Interprofessional Collaborator for Physiotherapy include Miranda Termat from St. Joseph's Care Group in Thunder Bay.
And Navneet Sidhu from St. Joseph's Continuing Care Center in Sudbury. Congratulations.
Therapy winners for Interprofessional Collaborator include Nicole and Karen Pontello. Both are based out of Partners in Rehab in Thunder Bay.
And Rachel Kemp, who at the time of her nomination was working at Neo Kids Children's Treatment Center in Sudbury and is now at Hamilton Health Sciences McMaster Children's Hospital in Hamilton.
And the winners for Speech Language Pathology include Christina Venier from Firefly in Kenora.
And Kayla Palambaro, Sioux Area Hospital in Sault Ste. Marie.
Our final award is the Northern Ambassador Award. This is awarded to a preceptor who is recognized for being a strong ambassador for their community and who creates a welcoming environment for all learners of all disciplines.
Nominees include Alana Augruso, Carolyn Auclair, Cassandra Pellerin, Celine Emery and Marissa Mancinelli, Deanne Lee, Deanna Sullivan, Deha Reimer, Diane Pigeot, and Ellen Nadeau.
Also nominated, Erica Ogilvie, Grace King, Jackie Hammelbrunner, Jackie McCormick, Jagre Gua Holida, Joby Kiambo, Karen Figliomeni, Kimberly Forshaw, Lori Alfano, Lindsay Gibba.
Nominees also include Megan Bellinger, Michelle Gould, Nicole Wooden, Patricia Della Cecca, Sandy Singbeal, Sarah McSheffrey, Stephanie DeZango, and Tricia Wern.
The winners of the Northern Ambassador Awards for the NOTIT program are Dia Ramir and Joby Kiambo. Dia works with the Dryden Diabetes Center of the Dryden Family Health Team. Joby is recognized for her preceptor role while working at Noshwawantag Health Center on Manitoulin Island. He currently works at Mimawasing North Shore Community Health Services.
And winners for Northern Ambassador for Physiotherapy include Alana Agruso from Santee Physiotherapy and Associates in Thunder Bay,
Cassandra Pellerin from Health Tweak in Sudbury,
Thurangan Lingham from Wilson Memorial Hospital in Marathon, and Stephanie Zango from Lake of the Woods District Hospital in Kenora. Congratulations.
For the occupational therapy program include Kimberly Forsh for the Northwest, based out of St. Joseph's Care Group in Thunder Bay.
And Lori Alfano from Sault Area Hospital in Sault Ste. Marie. Congratulations.
And the Northern Ambassador winners for speech language pathology include Caroline Auclair, who works at Firefly in Sioux Lookout.
And the Northern Ambassador Award for Audiology is Jean-Grégoire Rita. He is based in Sudbury and works at the Sudbury Audiology Clinic.
It is my pleasure to award the honorable mention to Jackie Hummelbrunner, who was nominated this year for commitment to clinical education, interprofessional collaborator, and for the Northern Ambassador Award. Jackie has been a key factor in the advancement of speech-language pathology in both clinical education and patient care in Northern Ontario for the last 16 years. Congratulations, Jackie.
If you were a recipient for one of our awards today, we will follow up with you in the near future to get your mailing address where your printed certificate and gift can be sent. This year, the recipients will receive a gift card from the NOSM online store to buy some NOSM swag of their choosing. As we started with this presentation, we want to thank again all of our health science preceptors for your time, your energy, and your enthusiasm for clinical education in Northern Ontario. Thank you.
Thank you to all of our award winners and all of our preceptors. Without you, what we do here at NOSM would not be possible. So we thank you greatly.
Thank you to everyone who participated tonight. Thank you to all of our award winners, to everyone who was nominated, and to everyone who has a passion for clinical teaching. Thank you.
Thank you again to all of our clinical preceptors, those who have been awarded, those who have been nominated, and those who continue to strive to create clinical education and excellence in the North. Thank you.
A big thank you to everyone. We truly appreciate all of your outstanding contributions.
Congratulations to all the nominees and winners tonight, and a huge thank you for everything you do to promote clinical education and rehab services in the North.
To all our clinical preceptors who are so important in the education of students who are our future colleagues. Merci beaucoup. Chimigwech. Thank you very much.
Here in the North, you take great responsibility and initiative in sharing your skill and knowledge, which ultimately helps impact our communities we serve positively. Thank you.
All right. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen here. Thank you again, everyone, for attending tonight. And I know this was a bit of a different way to present our nominees and our award winners for the Preceptor Awards this year. But hopefully it was able to keep your interest. And again, congratulations to all the nominees and winners. Before we conclude, I am going to pass things over back to Perry to give some final words for us.
Bonjour. I wanted to take this time to also thank all of the award winners and those who were even considered for that recognition, that acknowledgement. It's an important thing to do amongst your peers to lift each other up, to raise each other up from time to time, to acknowledge the work they do in as helpers, especially in that field of medicine where it's all about healing, and healing is about bringing balance. And acknowledging each other helps keep that balance amongst each other. Remind us the worth that we all have and how we are there for each other. And even that acknowledgement itself is a form of medicine. It feels good to be able to lift someone up, and it feels good to be lifted up every once in a while. And so I wanted to say chimigwech to all of you, for the presenters, for the ones who came to listen and add to their knowledge bundle in that work that you all do. And a special acknowledgement to my friend Joseph, who I've been friends with for a few years now. And I'm always proud to be able to assist him in whatever endeavor he is accomplishing or working towards and doing. So this evening, it's a beautiful evening. I ask that you all take the rest of the evening to just take in all the things that you have heard, things you've said, and all that knowledge that is just still in the air tonight. So chimigwech to everyone for everything you do, and I'm sure our paths will cross again.
Thank you very much, Perry. Chimigwech. Merci beaucoup. So that concludes the webinar for this evening. And next week, we'll be sending out the RSVP for the next webinar, which will be on virtual healthcare. Subsequent sessions will also include the virtual supervision of students. And as I mentioned, active offer as well as Francophone health. So we have a big lineup for the rest of 2020. And for 2021, as I mentioned at the beginning, there's going to be a webinar evaluation form that you can submit suggestions for future topics for us to continue your professional development and talk about important issues related to rehab and health sciences in Northern Ontario. The one last thing I will mention, and I believe it was mentioned during the video, but just in case it wasn't, so for all of the award winners, there will be a short description of the nomination for each winner on the NOSM Rehab Science and NOTA websites in the near future once we can get that information uploaded. So thank you again, everyone, and have a wonderful evening.